I'm Noah Abrams, and welcome to The Days Between, the show where I talk to my friends, people I admire, and people I want to better understand about success, failure, happiness, and misery, as well as all the other elements that make up a life well lived. Along the way, we'll look at mental, spiritual, and physical health, and when life didn't go as planned, the steps they took to get themselves from A to B and beyond. This week, I'm speaking with Olivia Hill. As Tennessee's first openly transgender elected official, Olivia ran her campaign focused on being the most qualified person to sit at the table. A native of Nashville with over 3 decades of engineering experience, Olivia's priority is helping to keep her hometown's underground infrastructure on pace with its above-ground development. Raised by a mother to never give up, Olivia began the journey towards becoming herself at a young age, having to reconcile an environment which told her she should be one way, while internally feeling another. She spent her adolescence in constant turmoil and turned to the Navy in hopes of finding a solution. After nearly a decade, Olivia left a combat veteran with a myriad of skills, including how to hide the parts of herself she needed to keep secret in order to remain safe. Upon returning to Nashville, Olivia began her 25-year career with Vanderbilt University, where she would ultimately transition and in the process receive what she calls a huge education. Olivia never set out to make history, but in a state intent on making life more difficult for its transgender community, her personal experience makes her the perfect person to do so, and those who supported her candidacy appear to agree. It is my pleasure to present Olivia Hill on The Days Between. So I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee with Olivia Hill. You are from Nashville.
I am. I'm a 4th-generation Nashvilleian.
Tell me about growing up in Nashville.
You know, in some ways, Nashville used to always be a great, big, little bitty small town. And it was a place that a lot of people knew somebody. So a lot of people were connected. And I know your mom and dad, you better be careful. You better do what you're supposed to do kind of thing. And it was just it's just great.
Any siblings?
No, only child. Spoiled, rotten, only child.
Tell me about your parents.
So my parents divorced when I was a year and a half old. I was raised by a single mom, my mother, who started out at HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, as an assistant secretary as a single mom and worked her way all the way up to executive project manager building hospitals all over the country and retired at 56 or 57, my age. Well, a little younger than me.
I've heard a story about your 5th grade variety show.
Yeah, Miss Harris's class. And it was at 5th grade, and they were going to do a variety show, and I wanted to do Minnie Pearl, and I had stayed up late on Friday and Saturday nights, listening to my little AM radio, WSM, and listened to the Grand Ole Opry, and I just thought it was cool, and I loved the way she told jokes. I loved the laughter that she used to get. And so when it came for a part was open, I volunteered to be Minnie Pearl, and I thought, wow, this is super cool. And so I went home. I was excited. I told my mom, and she got me this straw hat, and she glued some flowers onto it and made a little price tag of 99 cents and hung it on there. And she said, here you go. And I'm like, Mom, I need a dress. Minnie Pearl always wears a flowery dress. I need a dress. And she's like, oh, you can't wear a dress to school. And I thought to myself, it's okay. I know her jokes. I can pull it off anyway. I wear some bib overalls. It'll be fine. And so I was standing there on stage, and the curtain goes up, and I walked out onto the front of the stage, and I'm like looking around. Of course, my mom's sitting right in the front row, and I kind of like waved at her, and I'm like, howdy. And you expect the crowd to say that back. And the whole crowd just kind of stared at me like, why is this little boy on stage pretending to be a woman and trying to be Minnie Pearl? And it just crushed me. And I ran off stage, and I ran into the hallway and started to cry. My mom came and got me, and that's when we had the big talk, and that's when it started that she told me that I had to be a boy, and I had to do boy things, had to like boy stuff. And I was also sent to a psychiatrist every Wednesday for 2 years to teach me that I could only like boy things and do boy stuff. And at the same time, she signed me up for Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, football, baseball, basketball, and every other manly thing she could do to try to fix me. And so that was the start of me feeling of broken. I always felt like me my whole life. But until age 10, I never felt broken.
What was high school like for you?
High school, I tried so hard to kind of fit in with the in crowd, and I was trying to get with the right jocks and the right men, and that doctor told me that I had to be a boy. And so when you're 10 years old, you hear from a doctor, that's just like, it's the truth. There, at age 10, there's a couple people that you really firmly believe, no matter what, they can't lie to you. It's not allowed. As a doctor, your teacher, a policeman, people of that kind of authority. And so I knew that I felt like me on the inside, but I was trying to be what I was told I was supposed to be because I felt broken. And so I tried to date, and most of the girls that I dated all broke up with me pretty quick because I was just too feminine. And in the 70s, there was really two choices. You were a very macho man or you're gay. And it was right at the start of gay was starting to get to be talked about and in a very negative way. So, I tried very, very hard to fit in with all the in crowd, and I didn't do a very good job at it. I kind of bounced around from group to group, but I tried my best to try to pass as a guy.
Well, what was going on with you emotionally inside?
It's hard. It's really hard to explain because I honestly felt broken. Because I felt like me on the inside. And I thought, what in the world is wrong with me that society, this doctor, my mother, my grandmother, and everything tells me that I'm supposed to be a boy. But on the inside, I feel like me. I feel like myself. I feel like a woman. And so there's just got to be something wrong with me because, I have certain parts of other things. And I have been told by doctors and other people that I have to be this other role. So there's got to be something mentally wrong with me. That I feel this way. And so I was at constant turmoil.
So in 1983, you graduate Hillwood High School.
Yeah.
And then what?
I medicated my hurt, my pain, as a lot of folks do in that age, with drugs and alcohol. In late 85, I decided, you know what? I know what I can do. I can join the military, and the military can fix me because I feel like a woman on the inside. I feel like me. But everybody and everything says I'm supposed to be male. And so if I join the military, they'll man me up and they will fix the broken parts of me and make me feel like I am who I am. And so 85, I went down and signed up to join the military. I was very much into my drug phase. And they asked me, could I pass the urinalysis? And I thought, I'd never heard that word. What is that, urinalysis? And they're like, well, that's where we test your urine and see if you've done any drugs in the last 30 days. And I said, well, I should probably come back in 30 days. And the guy kind of got really mad at me, and he took all my paperwork and he crumbled it up and he threw it in the trash. And he was like, if you can clean yourself up, then you come back and see me, and then we'll pretend like you were never here. And I'm like, okay. And that was the last time I did any illegal drug. I stopped that day in that moment because I wanted to join. I wanted to move my life forward. So that was around November. And then the first week of January, right after New Year's, I went back to there and signed up, took all my tests, passed with flying colors, and joined the military and got shipped off to Great Lakes in Chicago, Illinois. It was Navy, and boot camp was rough for me. I still had a feminine edge to me because I felt like me. It was around the third week of boot camp that they started having what the military calls a blanket party. And that's where when you're asleep, they come and throw a blanket over you. And 2 or 3 people on either side hold it down so you can't get up. And all 90-plus men come and hit you. And it's a way of controlling the group. And when you have someone who's fallen behind, someone who's not carrying their load, it's a military way that it's kind of like kindergarten. When one person does something wrong, then nobody gets to go to recess. And the military is very much that way, that if someone's making a mistake, then everybody has to pay that price. And so a lot of the men saw me as weak and were afraid that I would cause a problem with the instructors, and the company commanders would be rougher on us if I didn't man myself up. And so they took it as their job to do that. It was a third or fourth time that I was beaten up, that I had my nose broke. I was beaten up pretty bloody. And when the pressure released off the blanket, I took off and ran, and I hid in the shower. And I stayed there all night trying to stay safe. And that next morning, my company commander, Petty Officer Standard, I'll never forget him, came down the steps, and he looked at me and he said, "What happened to you?" And I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. I just wanted to be me. I just wanted to move forward and have the military fix me and change my life. And so I just looked at him and I said, I slipped and fell down the stairs. And he just kind of looked at me with this smirk that I'll never forget. He said, I suggest you be a little more effing careful since this is the first floor. And I kind of thought, well, way to go, Olivia. Shitty lie. But it really told me at that point that this may have been orchestrated by him, or he at least had knowledge of it. And so it was at that moment that I learned in mid-February of 1986 that I had to hide that side of me. If I wanted to survive and I wanted to move forward and stay safe, that I had to hide that side of me. And so I really just tried to just man myself up. I really tried to work on my voice. That's where I developed this voice, and I came as manly as I could possibly be. And I survived and made it through boot camp. And once I left boot camp, I went to my first ship, and I really treated it kind of like you see in some of the movies where some of the folks will walk into prison and they'll just walk up to the first person and punch them, and you create a situation. And that's kind of what I did. My first duty station we went was Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And we used to have a guy in engineering. Everybody called him Big Mo. First day I hit him. And he looked at me like a little scrawny rat because I was 6 foot, 157 pounds. And he just kind of looked at me like, how stupid are you? And I just looked at him and I said, Mo, you got two choices. You could beat me up, and you and I are both going to go to the brig. Or you can just go down to the engine room with me and we can get done what we got to get done. And he kind of looked at me like, something's wrong with this human. And he just kind of like grabbed me. And it's like we just walked down in the engine room and we went and got busy. And people left me alone. And so I learned from that moment forward that I had to build this hard exterior shell to pretend and to keep myself safe. And the meaner I was and the more rough that I was, the more people left me alone, and the safer I became. And I just did my job, and it was a way of survival to me.
And how long were you in the Navy?
Almost 10 years. I was 9 years and like 10 and a half months. It was just a month and a half or so shy of 10 years.
And you saw combat?
We sat 3 miles off the coast of Kuwait, shooting Tomahawk cruise missiles. According to the Norfolk newspaper, we were the first East Coast destroyer to start shooting Tomahawk cruise missiles during Desert Storm. And then we did that for a while, and then Desert Storm was pretty quick, but then we stayed over there because there was Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and there was a third one. I forget what the third one was called.
So just shy of 10 years, you leave the Navy, and then what?
I got out, I came home, and just by pure luck, found there was a position open at Vanderbilt University at the power plant, which is what I had done the whole 10 years I was in the Navy. And so I went and applied for that position and got lucky and got the job. And so I started January the 5th, I think it was, of 96. And then I stayed 26 years.
What was going on with you personally at this time?
You know, when I first started at Vanderbilt, I had been in the Navy 10 years, and I had pretended that role for so long that it almost just seemed real. It's like, I really am this guy. I really am this tough kind of badass person. And that's kind of the role that I continued, because a lot of the people that worked at Vanderbilt Power Plant were all ex-Navy or ex-Army. And so they kind of fell in that same mentality. And so I continued that on through there. As time went on, it's kind of like a tea kettle, and as it continues to brew, eventually you got to let off some steam. And my thing was to just get dressed as me. It wasn't anything sexual. I had a couple of dresses that I hid, and I was married at the time, and I would take a day off sick from work so that I could stay at home, and I just would get dressed. I'd just sit around the house and watch TV. It wasn't anything sexual, but it was a way for me to kind of feel like me. But then afterwards, I was consumed with guilt that I still had this feminine side inside of me. It's still there, it's still lingering around, and why is it there, and what's going on, and why do I feel this way? And so it was a battle, that I tried my best to be this tough, macho man, and sometimes I would allow me to come out. And it was kind of a balancing act. It was kind of like balancing a BB on a butter knife, It was just one of those things you did.
Now, was your wife at the time aware of this?
No. I managed to hide it from every single person, because I learned in boot camp that if I let any piece of it out, it could be very bad for me. And so I hid that from every single person. She never had an idea. No one I ever dated after she and I divorced ever knew for a while until around about 2010. That's when the internet and knowledge started to come out. I could research and do a little bit more to learn more. I didn't fully understand being trans and what that meant. I just knew that I felt like me on the inside, and that's wrong, and I shouldn't do that. And so I just kind of went through life feeling that way. And it was kind of, I don't know, it's tough.
And now you had children as well, correct?
Yeah. I have a son who's 35 next week, and my daughter will be 34 this Christmas.
So you were keeping you in a vacuum, essentially.
Absolutely. Which is what most trans people do. We hide the us to protect us. It's what I ran a trans support group for a couple of years until I decided to run for office, and I stopped because there's a few girls in my classes that were not out to anybody but the group, and I didn't want to take a chance of somebody trying to use that as ammunition against me. But it's so common with so many trans women that and it's a big thing now with a lot of the LGBT community. There's a lot of lesbians and gay men that are coming out that have been married with children, that have hidden their true self and their true identity for years because it's what they felt like they were supposed to do. There's so many lesbians out there that are coming out now that felt like they were supposed to get married and have 2.5 children and stay at home and take care of the house. And I tell people it's when my egg cracked. There's a point in your life where you get to where it's just, I can't live this lie anymore. I have to be me. I don't know what's going to cost me. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how this is going to go forward, but I don't care. I have to be me. And so, I hid it from everybody.
The egg crack, was there a specific moment or event?
When my mother passed away in February of 2015, my mother so much wanted me to be the proper, perfect gentleman. And I always used my manners around my mother. I always called her ma'am, and I always tried to be a good gentleman in front of her because that's what she wanted. I didn't want to disappoint her. In the moment after she passed, it was just like everything just kind of came out. It's kind of like, I don't have to tell this lie anymore. And I wish now, it's my only regret, is that I would have told my mom earlier. Because I think that as an older person, she would have struggled with it for a minute. But gosh, she was such a cheerleader to me. I can't help but think now that I believe that she would have been on my side and she would have understood with me and would have helped me move this along.
So your mother passes, your egg cracks. What does that look like?
Well, I started to really do some hardcore research and reading to try to find out what is it about a trans person and what's involved and what happens, and is this really possible that someone can feel like a woman on the inside and actually be in a male body, and is this possible? And so I started doing a lot of research and things, and I found out that it is true. And it took me almost 2 years to finally get the courage to say, okay, this is me. This is what I'm going to do.
Were you doing this on your own, or were
Yes.
you in therapy? Or
Yeah, I was doing this all on my own. And I decided, my kids are my whole world. And so I'm going to take each one of my children out to dinner, and I'm going to tell them. And then if my kids are okay with this, I don't care who else knows. As long as I've got my kids on my side, then I'm golden. And so I took my son to dinner, he and his wife, and I took a picture on my phone of me dressed as myself, and I laid it down on the table, and I said, that's me. I'm transgender, and this is how I'm going to move forward. And he just looked at me and said, I don't care, Dad. If that's what makes you happy, that's fine by me. And I'm like, oh, my God, my best friend in the whole wide world is okay with it. There's nothing that can hurt me now. And I was really worried about how my son would accept it. I kind of felt like my daughter would be like, it's fine, no worries. And my son would be a little hesitant. But my son was just no problem. And so a couple of days later, I took my daughter out and I told her, And I can't help but think that he probably called her, so it was probably no real surprise to her. But she looked at me and she said, well, this is crap. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, does this mean I got to buy you 2 Christmas presents? Which is the prankster in her, which is very much after me. And I said, no, honey, it's just me. And so I felt like at that moment that I could really conquer the whole world. I had no idea how hard a pathway it was going to be, but I knew that I had my 2 children, my whole world. I care less what my employer thought of me or what friends thought of me or anything else. As long as I have my 2 favorite people in the whole wide world on my side, nothing else can hurt me. And so that's kind of how I started. And I took my first dose of estrogen Thanksgiving weekend, 2017.
Now, in 2017, you were diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what does that mean exactly?
I don't know the real science behind it, and I'm just being honest. I know that I feel like me on the inside, but my outside body doesn't match. And so I feel different from everyone else. And I've done a lot of reading and research, and we all start out as female. And then around, I think it's like around the 8th week that we start to transition from either being female or transition to being male in the womb. And it's just like going to work. We all go to work the same way every single day. And occasionally there's traffic and you have to go around the traffic to get there, but you still end up in the same place. But occasionally there's a bad storm or snow or something and you just can't make it to work and you're just stuck. You may have to get a hotel room and you can't go back home and you can't go to work. And that's what happens with gender. And sometimes, occasionally, that gets stuck. Almost 3% of the people in the United States are born intersex, and that's someone who's born with some form of both and that has gotten stuck somewhere along the way. And once I learned that, I realized that if someone can have 2 genders at the same time, then it's possible that someone could have one but feel like the other, or feel like the other and have one. You know, it goes either way. And so that was the start of my journey, that once I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria, that we started moving forward.
You mentioned the doctor when you were 10 telling you that you had to be a boy. Now that a doctor is telling you that you have gender dysphoria, was there any sense of validation?
Yes. And it's the reason why I take my estrogen shot every Wednesday, because that's when I went to go see the psychiatrist, was every Wednesday for 2 years. And it's kind of a way for me to kind of be like, yeah, I was right. And sorry you were wrong, and I'm okay. Because I've never been a retaliatory type person. But it was just kind of a way for me to say, sorry, sir, you were wrong, and I'm right.
So you come out to your kids, you share the side of yourself, you have their support. What was it like at Vanderbilt?
Well, it was different because it was a very fluid time, because my children told me that it's okay. We're fine, Dad. We don't care. The friends that I came out to told me, it's fine. That's who you are. It's okay. And as I learned, as we started moving forward, that all those people that I came out to started to take a step back, and then another step back, and then another step back. And it's kind of like you go to the party and there's that one person that you really don't want to talk to, but you don't want to be mean. And so you talk to them and you're slowly kind of like backing away, trying to pretend like you've got somewhere else you need to be until you're far enough away that you just turn and just bolt. And that's what everybody was doing. And so when I came out to Vanderbilt was phenomenal. They set everything up, told me everything was great, told me everything was going to be fine. And so I still had that in my brain, that is Vanderbilt going to do the same thing to me that my kids and my family and everybody else has done? They all have said it was okay up front, but then they all started to back away. So it was a very scary time. I was a senior supervisor running a multi-million-dollar power plant, and every single person that worked under me was a Trump-supporting, gun-toting Republican that is not okay with the trans community at all. And so I knew it was going to be hard. So it was different. But then that's when a lot of things changed for me. And I got what I like to call a huge education. You know, when I started estrogen, so many things happened to me, and so many things started changing in my body. But the thing that rocked my world the most was the loss of my white male privilege that I had no idea that I had. By trade, I'm a plumber, pipe fitter, welder, high voltage electrician, diesel mechanic, jet engine mechanic, boiler specialist, control specialist. And I was under the impression that all those titles and all of that knowledge is because of me and my hard work. Because it was me who went in on third shift and talked to the welders to get them to teach me how to weld and off the clock. And it was me who went in on Saturday nights when they had a planned outage with the high voltage electricians to learn high voltage electricity. And it was me who did all those things off the clock. And I went in at 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes so I could be with the third shift guys so I could practice welding in the welding shop before my regular workday started at 6:30. And I thought that all those things I did were because of me. And then I realized that, number one, if I was a woman, a power plant would have probably never hired me. And number two, when I showed up at 3 o'clock in the morning to ask them to teach me about welding, they'd have probably told me to go sit in my office and do paperwork. Because after I fully transitioned and had all my surgeries, that's what happened to me. And I was told to go sit in my office and do paperwork. I was told to go answer the phone so I don't break a nail or mess her makeup up. And I was like, you realize that not only did I hire you, but I trained you. So whatever superior knowledge you think you have in your brain, it came from me. And so it was hard for me. We had heard all of our lives about male privilege, and I didn't understand it. And I've tried so hard to come up with a different word besides privilege because it doesn't feel like privilege. It feels like everything we've got, we've worked for. And it's so weird that it is how it is. And then it just hit me square between the eyes because now in public, grown men come up and correct me. I've never had a grown man in my entire life walk up to me and tell me that I wasn't parked exactly straight or that I shouldn't run my car while I'm pumping gas or that I should smile or I should do things. I've never in my entire life had a grown man come and correct me until I transitioned. And it was both annoyance and anger and validation at the same time because every man that came and walked up to me accepted me as a woman and treated me as such. And so it was kind of a bittersweet. It's like you accept me 100% as me, but now you're treating me as me. And so it's been a battle.
So how did things play out at Vanderbilt?
There's only like so much I can really talk about, but as I continued to move on and I worked my way up the ladder, complaining, trying to get some help, eventually they were like, we just need to send you home on paid admin leave so we can do an investigation and sort all this out. I was on paid admin leave for 2 years, and then we filed a federal lawsuit, and within a few months we settled it, and then we kind of moved forward. And that's all that I think I can really legally tell you. I know that there's an awful lot online. You can read my case that's online, and there's a lot more out there that you can learn and read, more than I can tell you. But what I can tell you is I don't have a bitter taste in my mouth about Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's great. The problem that I had was when my transition is society, because it wasn't just Vanderbilt. It was the man on the other side of the island at the pump. It was people in the streets. It was sitting in meetings with men who, are you okay? Why are you mad? Is it that time of the month for you? And I'm like, and then once they know that I'm trans, I get asked at least 2 or 3 times a week if I've had the surgery. And so it's just a constant all in all. It's like as a gay man or as a lesbian woman, you get the privilege to kind of hide a little bit. If you just kind of just go to work and you just do your thing and you're just yourself, you don't get really asked too many questions. But as a trans person, you don't get to hide. Once you come out as trans, it's like we're not very passable in the beginning, and it's pretty hard. And so you're on full display by everybody for a while.
You announced online in December of 21 that you settled the lawsuit, but at the same time, you announced that you retired from Vanderbilt, where you had worked for 25 years. How did that feel for you? Because this wasn't some job that you had for a couple of years. This was the majority of your career. Emotionally, how did that feel to have that career end like that?
Vanderbilt was like family to me. I have almost that whole campus memorized of all the utilities. I can tell you where every building is and where every steam line goes into each building, and it was like family. And I spent all my off time trying to become a better Vanderbilt employee. I held every single position in my division, And so I felt like I was an asset to Vanderbilt, and I felt like Vanderbilt was family to me. And so it was very devastating to me. For the first couple of months, I was just in pretty good depression. I didn't know what I was going to do. I've got almost 40 years of utilities and engineering in my head. What am I going to do with this? There's no other power plant's going to hire me as a woman. So what do I do? And so for a couple of months, I really just felt like I was kind of at the end of the road. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go and how I was going to do this. And then around February or so, I decided that I was going to fight for women's rights. I found that women's rights and trans rights are almost the same thing. And so I joined HRC, Human Rights Campaign, and I got heavily involved with their steering committee and the governor's board, and I just started becoming an activist, and I had to have a drive. I had to have something to do that felt meaningful, and that's where I went next.
According to the ACLU, in 2023 alone, Tennessee has introduced 26 anti-LGBTQ measures. In March, Governor Lee signed a measure into law that would restrict transition-related care for minors, as well as a first-of-its-kind bill prohibiting some drag performances. Now, a federal judge ruled in June that the Tennessee drag law was unconstitutional. But given your experience with your family, given your experience at Vanderbilt, given the lawsuit, and given the environment in Tennessee, why run for office? Why do that to yourself? Where does that motivation come from?
It's kind of what's in my heart. I know deep down inside that a majority of the hate that I've received and a lot of the trans folks have received has just been from a lack of knowledge. In the first 2 years I was on estrogen, I shrunk 1.5 inches because the disc in between each one of the vertebrae is less on a woman than it is on a man. My skin is thinner, so I cut easier, I bruise easier. My pores are smaller, so I sweat less. And because I sweat less, we have drier skin, which is why women have to moisturize all the time. I lost every bit of my upper body strength. It's like every bit of it's gone. And that was the first thing. That happened to me within the first 3 months. My lung capacity is 3/4 of what it used to be. My red blood cell count's about half, almost half of what it used to be. I've struggled my whole life with weight. I have tried my best to gain weight my whole life. I've taken every weight gain gimmick there is out there. And it appears all I needed was estrogen. Sadly, the only place I put on weight is just right here in the midsection in the hips and thighs. But so many people just see us as men in wigs. It's why there's a problem with us going in the bathroom. It's why there's a problem with us participating in sports. And it's just like the swimmer that had her medals taken away from her, and people argued that she had an unfair advantage. And what she did is she started taking estrogen and then started taking her testosterone blockers and then stopped competing for 2 years until her levels came into cisgender female levels. And then she started to train again, and that's when she competed. And people say, oh, well, that's just not true, and men are bigger, and you're just bigger bone. And I know plenty of tall women. There's, Gloria Johnson, who's running against Marsha Blackburn right now, is 6'3", and she's just a plain cisgender woman. And she's bigger than me. And in a swimming contest, she'd probably beat me. And so that part is just... it's just a lack of knowledge. And the other thing is so I want to use this position to help my city, my home city, and use my knowledge. I've got 40 years of what some people may say just useless information, but I have all the formulas from engineering and pipe coefficient and flow and pipe size and valves and gate valves and steam lines and all this information that I get to use now to help my city be a better city. Really no one that has my knowledge bank on council. So when a contractor comes up and says, we want to add on to this line, and it's actually a 75-year-old line that's supposed to pass so much water, then if we can do a wall thickness test, we find out that the wall, it's got so much scale built up on it that it's actually a 28-inch line instead of a 36-inch line. And that's where some of the old council just has to take what an engineer says. And a lot of times these engineers are hired by the developer, and so they're just going to pass along whatever information is given to them. I think that I'm an asset on council for those reasons. My number one goal, my number one job is to fix the broken parts of Nashville. That's my number one goal. That's what I ran on. I ran as a qualified human to sit at the table. I didn't run as a trans woman. I didn't run as anything other than as a qualified human. I would be foolish to say that the rest of it doesn't come along with me as baggage. And so I use this platform to help educate some people and to help some people understand that we're real people, we're real humans, and that this is a real thing. It's not something that we just try to sneak into a women's bathroom, although they are cleaner and better.
Well, you ran and got 12.9% of the vote and became the first openly transgender woman elected to office in the entire state of Tennessee. How does that feel?
You know, it's the one question that I keep being asked the most, and the only common answer I have is to stop and think for a second of what your greatest wish is, and whether it to be, you know, a billionaire, to own your own island, to be the CEO of Dell or some major company. Think for a second what your greatest wish is. And then imagine how you would feel tomorrow if you woke up and that wish came true. And that's what it's like for me. I get to be me, and I am elected as Olivia Hill, the first trans woman in Tennessee history to be an elected official, and I get to use my knowledge and be myself. And there's really nothing in this. Hitting the lottery tomorrow of $1.5 billion would not make me any happier than I am right now at this very moment, because I've wished to be me my whole life. Since I was 10 years old in Miss Harris's class, I wanted to be me. And not only do I get to be me, I have a platform to be me, and I get accepted as me. And when I sat in my seat for the very first time, I cried because I knew that as a trans woman, I made it. I made it to the other side.
So we were talking off mic earlier, and I think it was the very first article I read about you was about which restroom you were going to use. And I read through the article and I read your quotes about your campaign really being about the most qualified person for the job.
Right.
And the headline is about which restroom you're using. And I just thought to myself, that has got to be so incredibly frustrating.
It is. Last year, they passed a couple of things. They passed the bathroom bill, and the bathroom bill basically says that if you allow trans people to use your bathrooms, that you have to post a sign outside the bathroom that says that this could be for women or also for trans women. And then they found that to be unconstitutional and that they couldn't do that, and so they struck it down, and it's no longer a law. There was also the drag bill that went into court, and they found that to be, I forget what they used to strike that down, but that's no longer a thing either. Both were against trans folks. It was never about the drag community wearing drag, because the majority of folks see us as men in wigs, and so it was a way to control what we wear. And then there's House Bill 1440, Senate Bill 00239 that went into effect this July that defines what sex is. And it says that sex is based on what is on your original birth certificate and is assigned at birth by the physician and is immutable, which means it can never be changed. And it's a very short and sweet law that basically says that your state identification must match your original birth certificate. And pre-July 1st, it used to always be your driver's license had to match your birth certificate unless you've had sufficient treatment to change your gender marker, and then you just went to your doctor, they wrote you a letter, and then you go to DMV, and then you could change your driver's license, put an M or an F on it. My driver's license currently has an F on it. But as of July 1st, I'm supposed to change my driver's license back. And I know that because the other two laws were struck down, that now it's defined. Now it says that a man or a woman is defined as what's on your original birth certificate. Tennessee is the only state in the entire union that will not allow the trans community to change their birth certificate in any way. Alabama, Mississippi are ahead of us. We're the only state that will not allow to change. And the reason why is because there's so many laws tied to the birth certificate with the bathroom bill and the trans athletes and trans healthcare. And the part that so many people don't understand is not only did they make it illegal for trans youth to receive any kind of care, is they required that all trans youth that are already in the middle of transition must detransition by March of next year and stop taking any kind of hormones or leave the state. And so it blows my mind with the suicide attempt rate in the trans community is well over 50%, that someone would pass laws like this. But the reason why they've done that is because they really don't see us as anything acceptable. They see us as men in wigs. They see that we're pretending, and they don't accept us of who we are, which is what I do on the side. Is I do a lot of advocacy work to stand up and help educate people. I was at lunch or dinner at a local sports bar in Nashville, and I was sitting down, and there was a lady beside me having dinner, and some guy came up and was talking to her, was flirting with her. He was just talking. And after he walked away, I just kind of leaned over, and I said, he liked to hear himself talk. And she's like, yeah, we were talking politics, and thank goodness, he's on my side. If he'd been one of them crazy lefty liberals, I'd have ate his lunch. And I'm sitting there, and at the time, I got my rainbow watch on. I got my fingernails painted rainbow, and I thought, oh, okay. And so I thought, mind your own business, Olivia. And I turned around, I started eating my dinner, and I turned back to her, and I said, ma'am, I got to ask you a question. And I mean this in a learning way for myself. But what is it about the liberal people that you hate so much? Because maybe you've got some knowledge and maybe I'm wrong. And if that's the case, then I would like to learn. And she's like, that damn Nancy Pelosi. And I said, ma'am, that's a person. That's not the whole body. What is it about the entire liberal community that do you dislike so much? And so she stops and she's looking up at the sky and she's like, well, I've never been asked that question. I have to think about that for a minute. And I'm sitting there kind of chuckling, thinking, well, she's going through her Fox talking points of how to respond to this. And so she continues on. I turn back and I'm eating my dinner. And about that time, she slams her hand down the bar and she turns and looks at me and points. And she's like, that damn man swimmer. And I said, are you talking about the trans woman? And she's like, no, that's a man. That's not a trans person. That's a man. And I said, ma'am, have you ever met a trans person? And she's like, no. And I said, okay, well, what do you do for a living? She said, I'm a nurse. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to be easy. And I said, so you know that women are shorter than men? And she was like, yes. And I said, and you know that as a nurse that women have thinner skin than men do? And she's like, yes. And so I start covering the whole thing. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, my name's Olivia Hill and I'm trans. And I just listed everything that's happened to me the first 2 years I was on estrogen. And she stopped for a second and she just like looked at me and she's like, can I hug you? And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she apologized and she hugged me. We're now friends. I still think she probably votes Republican, but she is more knowledgeable now and she understands now. She makes comments on my Facebook every once in a while. It's like, Olivia, I don't quite understand this, but thanks for explaining it to me so that I can learn a little bit better. And it's how we change this, because she's going to go tell 3 or 4 people that she knows a trans person and knows about all the things that have happened to me. And then those 3 people are going to tell 3 people and those 3, and that's how Amway and Tupperware got started, and it's just, it's my life goal. And I think that a lot of the hate that we have is just from a lack of knowledge. It's not mean people out there. Some things are very intuitive and you would assume that a man is stronger than a woman. But when you understand what happens in a transition, you learn that, okay, that's one of the first things that happen is they lose their strength. With trans men, which are people who've transitioned from female to male, it doesn't matter what bathroom they're used. They can walk into a men's bathroom and nobody ever says a single thing to them. They can compete in sports. They're accepted. They gain male privilege. They gain the ability to do kind of what they want. As trans women, we have less rights and things and decisions as men do, but not as much as women do. We're kind of in this little purgatory, stuck place in the middle. And the biggest majority of us, they just don't see us as who we are. 1% of the people in the United States are Jewish, but 1% of the people in the United States are trans. So if you've met someone who's Jewish, you've met someone who's trans. And almost 3% of the people in the United States are redheaded, but almost 3% of the people in the United States are intersex, and that's someone who's born with both. So if you've met somebody that's redheaded, you've met somebody who's intersex. We're more common than people understand, and we are real. The thing that the Republicans are doing right now is they're trying so hard to scare people. They're not trying to say, I'm going to fix this for you. I'm just going to make this person go away. I'm going to make it hard on these people. I'm not going to do anything to help you. I'm just going to make it hard on those people. And that seems to resonate with the Republican Party.
How do you maintain your composure? How do you not just lose your temper in situations like this?
I love to give. I love to help people. And, if you look at our Facebook and any of our campaign stuff online, and we've received a pretty fair amount of hate. And I always, respond back with, well, thanks for coming by and visiting, because every time you visit, Facebook thinks that my post is more popular, so the algorithm changes and it makes more people see it. So thank you for coming by. It's like, no, I'm not here for you, and this, that, and the other, and I use it as fuel to kind of give back, to help them learn and help them learn how things are. I was born in 1965, and civil rights passed in 63. So 2 years before I was born, in the South, it was pretty illegal for people of color to use certain bathrooms. And now here I am having trouble about what bathroom to use. It's like things kind of came full circle again. It's kind of sad.
Am I incorrect in assuming just making gender-neutral bathrooms would solve this problem?
Yes and no. It would solve this particular problem, but it would not solve the problem that a lot of people have against the trans community. And it's not just Republicans. There's people on all sides that have issues with the trans community. And it's because of lack of education and knowledge. And if they just understand and meet and sit and talk to someone who's trans, they'll learn a lot, and they'll grow, and they'll be able to move forward in a lot of ways. So that will take away one of the symptoms. It won't take away the problem. And the only way we can do that is to try to educate people. And I speak at the Nashville Police Academy. I've spoken at Nashville Law School, Tennessee Bar Association, churches, civic centers, Rotaries. I speak at Metro Social Services. Everywhere I get an opportunity to speak about trans rights and women's rights, and it seems to educate folks, and it's how we do. And eventually, we'll keep telling people, and they'll tell people, and eventually, that's how things change, just a little bit at a time.
How do you define success?
There's a saying within the trans community that a lot of people will tell you, or tell new people transitioning, and the goal is not to become passable. The goal is to become okay enough with yourself that you don't care whether you're passable or not. And they usually kind of happen at the same time. Once hormones have done enough work that you have become passable, is usually you've been through enough, three to 5 years, that you are really your true self, and you really don't care if you're passable or not. You just, and most of us, kind of are, and it doesn't matter if you're not. And some people never choose to have surgery. Some people never choose to have hormones. That's their choice.
How do you define failure?
Just giving up. It's a one thing that my mother instilled in me from day one. As soon as I could understand the English language, is that as Hills, we don't give up. We don't quit. I don't care what it is. We keep pushing forward. My grandmother moved here from Cookeville, Tennessee, and was a dirt poor, and probably didn't have shoes till she was probably 10 or 12 years old. And she came here and started out at the company was called Avco at the time. They built planes, and she really was Rosie the Riveter, riveting airplanes. And then she got into the fashion industry and started working her way up, and then she retired as one of the senior buyers at a very upscale clothier here in Nashville, that she flew to New York once a quarter to find out what the runway models were wearing. What was she going to pick for the women of Nashville to wear? And my mother started at HCA as assistant secretary and worked her way all the way up to executive project manager. My family just didn't quit. The women just kept pushing forward. And so for me, failure is giving up.
Can you name a personal or professional failure that ultimately set you up for success?
Well, there's been a few. My first division officer, Gerald W. Bradley, not that I still remember the man, was probably one of the meanest people I think I've ever known in my entire life. And it didn't matter what decision I made. If I said left, he said right. If I said right, he said left. But he was highly, highly intelligent. And when we would pull into different ports and people would go out in the town and go party, and he went back to his stateroom and he read tech manuals. And even though he was very hard on us, any of the supervisors, the captain and executive officer, would all rely on him heavily, because if you came to him with a question, he knew the answer. And so I learned in my career that if you really want to be somebody, you've got to know all of it. And so I started reading tech manuals, and I started learning everything there was about a GE LM2500 gas turbine engine. And I can tell you just about every bolt size and everything there is to know about it. And that was a strength to me. So he was hard on me, and in ways I felt like a failure. But because of his hard push, it kind of defined a good portion of my career.
How do you define happiness?
Right now, just right now, I really am probably the happiest human you have ever met in your entire life. For one to feel okay with oneself, I think, is the ultimate dream of happiness, because it really doesn't matter how much money someone has, or what status someone has, or what relationship you're in, or where you live. It really matters of how you feel about you. I mean, we've seen with movie stars that have committed suicide that you would think, how in the world can somebody with $300 million and a big movie star, they go do whatever they want to do. They could have anything they want. They can go buy whatever they want. How in the world could that person be so unhappy that they would take their own life? And the answer to that is that person was not okay with that person. And that is the one thing I have worked on most of my life, is to be okay with me. And it's been a struggle, and I haven't done a very good job at it until I transitioned. And now that I am me, gosh, there's nothing anybody can do to take that away from me.
What would you say to 18-year-old Olivia?
You're going to be okay, kiddo. Because for a trans person, there's so much that we have to go through. You have to go through at least 3 or 4 months of therapy just to get an assessment letter to prove that you have gender dysphoria before they would even allow you to take hormones. And so you have to go and pour your heart out and go through everything and be evaluated. And then once you do that, you get an assessment letter that you can start hormones. And then you have to go to a different therapist and go through the whole process again to be able to get a assessment letter to be able to get your name on a waiting list to have surgeries. And then you have to do it a third time to actually have surgeries. And the common question I get asked a lot was, do you wish your mom would have let you transition, and when you came home wanting to be Minnie Pearl, and just let you transition in? And I say no. And the reason why is because I honestly don't know where I would be right now if I would have transitioned in 1975. The society wasn't ready for somebody like me, and I don't know where I would have ended up. I don't know. I wouldn't have the lived experience that I have. I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have been in the Navy and learned that career, which would have helped me get into Vanderbilt and the power plant and excel the way that I excelled. Because the biggest problem I had at Vanderbilt power plant was not me being trans, was me being a woman. And so I tried everything I could do to be prepared for the transphobia I got, and most of it I got was just plain old sexism, the same stuff women have been putting up with for 500 million years. You can't go to lunch with us, Olivia. My wife would have a cow if she knew we were going to lunch with a woman. You can't go. And I know, but you're talking about work. And I said, sorry, you can't go. And excluded from meetings and the touches and the grabs and the look down my blouse and all the other things that women have been putting up with. And if I'd have had to do that in the 70s, I don't know that I would have survived. I don't know where I would be. And so I think that the life that I have and the life experience that I have happened for a reason. And so I'm happy to be where I'm at right now with the lived experience that I have and the ability to be on a platform to hopefully, educate folks and fix the broken parts of Nashville and make Nashville one of the greatest cities in the South.
How would you describe what you do for a living?
Helping people. I mean, that's the sole purpose of an elected official is to help people. And it doesn't matter if you want a law passed about your neighbor or the pothole that's in front of your house or the fact your trash didn't get picked up. You're there to help people. After my transition, I had a real hard time with self-esteem and things. And I watched an awful lot of self-help videos and tapes and audio. And one of the common things that I learned that so many of them had the same common denominator of Find something that you enjoy doing and find a way to do that all the time. And the thing that gives me the greatest joy is to do something for somebody else. And now I'm in a position that I get to do that every day. And it truly just makes me happy. To have a constituent call me and be angry and mad and say, my trash didn't get picked up, and then something happened the next day and their trash get picked up, and they go, oh, well, thanks, Olivia. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. It makes me feel like I've done something. I love to give back to the community, and it just thrills me that I get to do this for a living.
Olivia Hill, thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been an absolute honor.
The Days Between is a production of Noah Abrams Studio. Story editing by Andrew Henry. Mixing and mastering by Greg Henkin. Website and design by John Fisher. Theme music is by Evo. The Days Between can be found online at www.thedaysbetweenpodcast.com and on Instagram at The Days Between Podcast. My name is Noah Abrams. Thanks for listening.